reaches of the Milky Way galaxy. It's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie The Fifth Element, released in 1997. The synopsis is, every 5,000 years, pure evil returns to our solar system to destroy the Earth. It's up to struggling cab driver Corbin Dallas to find 5 elements that can save the universe. The story. I guess you can say that the story for The Fifth Element was influenced by many prior works. The first influence is Valerian and Laureline, a beautiful French space opera comic series created by writer Pierre Christin and artist Jean-Claude Mézières from 1967 to 2010, chronicling the adventures of 2 agents through space and time. It was highly influential in European pop culture and media. The writer and director of this movie, Luc Besson, was also influenced by it and began writing the script when he was only 16 years old in 1975 as a way to escape his lonely childhood. Besson was also influenced by the series of graphic novels called The Inkle, written by cult film director Alejandro Jodorowsky and illustrated by comic artist Jean Girard, otherwise known as Moebius, first published in 1980. And just before I go any further, if I mispronounce any names here, please forgive me. A lot of these names are foreign, and I did look up their pronunciation, but it's hard to remember while you're speaking. So I'm trying to do my best. Please forgive me. Now, The Inkle was Jodorowsky's way to actually create an epic story from recycled concepts that he did with Moebius for his failed attempt to adapt the book Dune into a film in the mid-1970s. It was documented in the movie Jodorowsky's Dune in 2013. Luc Besson continued to work on and modify the storyline for his story for many years. Originally, the material was set in the year 2300 about a nobody by the name of Zoltan Bleros who wins a trip to a resort on planet Floston Paradise where he meets Lilu, a 2,000-year-old sand girl who has the beauty of youth. In 1991, he had a 400-page script that was supposed to be a trilogy. He and Robert Mark Hamill condensed the movie into one, and it took Luke 22 years at the age of 38 to finally see his story realized on the big screen. From a story perspective, it feels familiar. That's because it's pretty simple of a concept at the core of it. It's good against evil. It also includes a love story that has a chase to the finish line, which gives this a kind of urgency in this science fiction adventure. The dialogue in the context of the story is highly underrated, and a testament to that are the many famous quotes from the movie expressing its comedy. The visual artistic storytelling is the brilliance behind the script. With subtext, comedy, sexual innuendos, it misdirects, it leads, it foreshadows, while amping up the threat in a very fun way. The pacing. At 2 hours and 6 minutes, it's a little long, but I hardly felt it. The film has a way of ramping up the stakes bit by bit until the ending climax, and it works. The challenge. The challenge in the film is called the ultimate evil. I've heard the evil in this film compared to the villain in The Never-Ending Story in 1984, where it is not actually a person, but evil as an entity. That's debatable, but the Nothing was a tool of people in the real world that wanted to turn the hopes and dreams into lies and to control people. However, in this story, I would say I would compare evil in this movie to the green orb of evil in Heavy Metal, released in 1981, which has a lot of similarities to this movie and connective tissue. But that evil was traveling through the universe, causing chaos and distraction wherever it went. In the segment Harry Canyon, there's a distinct similarity in the color palette and story as well. The segment is set in New York City, where a middle-aged cab driver who has a beautiful redhead gets into his cab and pleads with him to avoid capture. This actually would coincide with the time that Luc Besson was writing his script. The evil that appears in this movie is also an orb traveling through the universe. I love it. In fact, I imagine most often that the Terrakians, which were the race of warriors in heavy metal, would stop new orbs of evil on their traverse before they would grow large enough to eventually destroy the universe. So what we see in this movie is, in fact, the chance that they actually fail. It looks like they failed 2 times because it's hinted that our moon connected to Earth might actually have been one of those orbs of evil as well. Very interesting. There are tons of similarities between the 2 movies because Mobius was involved with both movies, and I'll go over the particulars as the review continues. It may not be a direct borrow from heavy metal, but it is nevertheless a striking commonality. The film opens up in Egypt in 1914, where a professor is uncovering the hieroglyphics that state that every 5,000 years, when 3 planets eclipse each other, a black hole opens a doorway, letting in an ultimate evil, spreading terror and chaos through the universe. The way to defeat this is to have 4 elements surrounded by a 5th one at this specific site. If evil stands there instead of good, life in the world, or perhaps the universe, will be destroyed. The film doesn't exactly explain the stakes, but it's mainly implied that life itself would end. Light turns to dark, life to death forever. So that would be the end of the struggle between good and evil. This discovery is aborted as aliens called Mondo Shawan have come to take the 5 elements because, as they say, quote unquote, war is coming and the stones are not safe on Earth anymore. The war that they are referring to is World War I, which began in 1914 and ended in 1918. And then World War II followed from 1939 to 1945. The end of the 5,000 years is coming up, so the Mondoshoans promise that they will keep the elements safe until their return to this site, just in time to save it. So we fast forward into the year 2263, when the military confirms that an evil orb that they think will be easy to destroy approaching the solar system, and they think that they can just launch ammunition at it, but to their dismay, the orb grows larger. And the message in the story, as given to us by one of the characters, is evil begets evil. It's a pacifist stance that demands that the characters find a non-violent way to defeat evil. Evil also has a direct effect on people. The movie doesn't tell us if evil is making people evil, but it may be doing just that without people knowing that they're being influenced. We can gather from the visual storytelling is that the orb can actually get into the mind of someone it wants to completely control. There's a visible black goo that oozes from their frontal cortex. Many viewers have tried to speculate what that goo is, but in conclusion, it's simply the byproduct of the orb's influence. It happens twice in the film, but it also seems to happen to people who have questionable morals. The first time was when a kind of warmongering general wanted to destroy the orb without even trying to figure out what it was. So he was very easy for the orb to control. As well, we discovered that a rich, unscrupulous mogul by the name of Zorg has been given the assignment from the orb, posing as a client, Mr. Shadow, to collect the stones. When the orb wants to increase the intensity of the search for the stones, it makes a phone call to Zorg in order to communicate with him. This is where we get a visceral visual to show us how it controls people by getting inside their minds. The black goo oozes down his forehead as well. Zorg, in particular, presents a great challenge in the story. Millions of citizens are his employees, and he has businesses in many industries, including being an arms dealer. He makes a deal with violent Mangalore warriors to get the stones, which are in a box, but there's no stones in it. So he breaks his deal with them and sets them up to kill themselves by not telling them about a conveniently placed self-destruction button. He kills his own henchmen for failing to complete his mission. He's savagely vengeful, expecting everything he wants with no exceptions. One thing that is very interesting about him is that he's fully capable of doing his own dirty work and sets out to do just that when the time comes. Being a mogul doesn't make him a bad person. There's so much that a person can do to help society by being an employer of so many people. But with Zorg, he loves the power of being needed. Part of the intrigue about his character is that he believes that creating chaos is providing something for people to do and keeping the economy going, pretty much admitting that perhaps one of his methods of wealth is through chaotic means, causing disasters to have the public depend on him for the answers. Now, that is truly evil. Now, what I love about this character is that in this case, Zorg is the Orb's henchman, and he actually never interacts with Corbin Dallas, who is arguably the main protagonist of the story. He's just a force working behind the scenes the whole time, and I adore that. I adore that so much. The next level of challenge in the story are the Mangalores, who I explained before are warriors with a cause of their own. The federal government scattered their people, so now they're out to gain weapons for their revenge. It's most likely that there are Mangalores scattered throughout the universe. The film doesn't go into detail, but you can imagine a whole other story just dealing with their history and what's going on with their people, trying to maybe organize themselves, trying to find a place to live and trying to find a place to continue their culture. I'm so fascinated by their culture of honor as well. Hollywood, you've got to make a movie or a series about these guys. They're so interesting to me. They strike a deal with Zorg to get 4 crates of weapons, but since they failed their objective, he double-crossed them. Barely escaping with their lives, they seek out a way to intercept the stones so they can negotiate with Zorg again and get those weapons. But after blundering that mission too, they decide to take hostages on a cruise ship to negotiate their terms. When all is lost, they decide to just destroy everything for their honor without regard for life. Perhaps Bassan was making a statement about terrorists to the Mangalores because Zorg says, "I don't like warriors, too narrow-minded, no subtlety, and the worst, they fight for hopeless causes. Honor? Ugh, honor's killed millions of people and hasn't saved a single one." So there's a little bit of subtext there, a little bit of social commentary without making a big stink and stopping the whole movie for it. Another flaw of the Mangalores is that they never fight without a leader, which makes them so easy to defeat. With the oddest mixture of black comedy, our protagonist Corbin Dallas dispatches the leader of the Mangalores, Aknot, and that sends the warriors in shock and confusion. And that is another aspect of their culture that is so fascinating, making you wonder, why can't they think for themselves? Why do they need a leader? And what is that process about? Is there a trial that creates a leader and then people feel like they can trust that person? I don't know. Maybe there's a ritual that they have to perform. I like the Mangalores because I'm curious about them. But as a challenge, they were written always to fail, which is very sad for them. They just can't win either which way they turn. And are they a good challenge in the story? Yeah, I think they achieve a lot of mischief in the story that sets the protagonist back several times in the film. So thumbs up for the Mangalores. Now the empathy. The empathy in this film is pretty strong. It's the debatable who the protagonist is, but I think at least the main one is Major Corbin Dallas, who is retired for only 6 months from the military, which ruined his marriage. He wasn't home very much, so his wife left him for his lawyer. So when we first see him, he's going through the paces of his life as a cab driver with a bit of a cynical outlook on everything. Luc Besson liked the idea of having his protagonist be a cab driver in honor of his dad, who worked a second job as a taxi driver to support Luc while he went to art school. Isn't that so sweet? And Luc, in honor of his dad, has put a cab driver in all of his films. Corbin was not only a space commando, but a highly decorated member of the elite Special Forces unit of the Federated Army, having saved the planet several times from impending doom. If we had met Corbin as a major, we'd already know what to expect from him. But meeting him as a man holding down a civilian job, we don't realize what a badass he is. We get a glimpse of this in Corbin's apartment at the beginning of the film with his trophies, and his unseen friend Finger alludes to Corbin having to save the world as if it has happened before, or even foreshadows exactly what is to happen. It's only until later, after seeing the film in action, that we understand the connection. From a writing perspective, I thought that presenting his identity in stages like this was brilliant. It helps us learn about his backstory slowly and eventually care about his character. He's already gone through a shift in perspective through tragedy. It's either going to get better from here or worse for Corbin. And as I said before, Corbin never encounters Zorg, but when the Mogul fires millions of employees, Corbin is actually among them. The film sets up the two to oppose each other equally in many ways. Zorg is the henchman and Corbin is the champion. While the ultimate evil is the main baddie and the fifth element is the main opposition to it to stop it. And you can witness this visually as Zorg can be seen with circles in his background, while Corbin is mostly framed around rectangles within his backgrounds. Among his unseen callers is his nagging mother, with a very thick, monotone New York accent, who lives on the lunar surface. She was a delightful comedic addition to the film, breaking up Corbin's reoccurring theme of loneliness. Corbin, sweetheart, you got broken fingers? You can't punch my number? 17 messages. And don't tell me your machine is broken again. Those things are good for 1,000 years. You wouldn't even feed your white pussycat Coquet, who you obviously love more than me. The calls of both Finger and his mother are like the punctuation on the boring haze of his depressed existence, and an exclamation point really comes to mind. All of that changes when a gorgeous young girl literally drops into his cab's passenger seat, Lilu. She is the supreme being, the ultimate warrior created to protect life, and the fifth element that is needed to stop the ultimate evil from succeeding. I remember seeing the scene where she tells Corbin that she's the fifth element, and I was totally confused as to how that would make sense, but eventually it does. Although Lilu can certainly fight her own battles, she is vulnerable because she is a fish out of water. In 1914, we actually saw Lilu in a stasis chamber where she had been for about 5,000 years. In 2263, the Mondoshoans were attacked by the Mangalores as they were bringing back the 5 elements to Earth. There were no survivors but the remnants of a hand, and from that hand, scientists were able to organically print Lilu's body and consciousness. She is from a different time and only speaks the divine language, so she has to learn English and human history throughout the course of the film. This plays a really big role in her personality. She is new to the world, showing us a bold bewilderment, fascination, and joyous innocence. What makes her special is that she may have been engineered, by whom we aren't told. It could have been the Mondoshoans. According to this movie, humans have 40 DNA memo groups, and she has 200,000 tightly packed with infinite genetic knowledge. The film often refers to Lilu as perfect, which is debatable, but she is perfect for Corbin because he falls in love with her instantly. There's a lot about Lilu that is not explained in the film, but I think that she can read minds. And this would explain how the film stops a beat for her to look into someone's eyes just before making a move. This is how she knows how to escape the lab in New York. And this is how she knows Corbin is safe. And how she knows that Zorg was going to try to kill her at the Diva's hotel room. The love story between Corbin and Lilo is really cute and actually believable. Even though there's a considerable age difference between the two, Corbin changes when he's with Lilu. He is nervous and mesmerized whenever he's around her. He's in a glaze of admiration when he talks about her. Heck, even the audience falls in love with Lilu by the end. She's so adorable, and she just puts a smile on my face to see how fascinated she is with something so simple as the transportation identification card called Multipass. She just says it over and over, Lilu Dallas Multipass. Multipass. And he's like, yes, it's Multipass. Multipass. She knows it's a Multipass. Lilu Dallas, she's my wife. I just love all that. It's just such a great tiny little banter between the two, and just shows a little bit into their relationship. It's very innocent and very sweet. Corbin is drawn to protect her because of her vulnerability, which actually pays off in the end when it's Corbin's love for her that actually saves the day. The kiss between them is foreshadowed by an earlier scene where Corbin tries to kiss her while she's sleeping. And in that case, it was without her permission, and he was reprimanded for it. Even though she's in position at the end of the movie to save the day, it doesn't work because the fifth element is humanity's love, whether it is the love of two people or something in general, but love is the fifth element. Her contact on Earth is Vito Cornelius, who is among a sect of priests who look after the Egyptian site that housed the elements before they were taken by the Mondoshoans in 1914, generation after generation. He's the only one who understands what is happening besides his trusty assistant, David. He tells the government about the situation and tells them that he is their contact. Cornelius refers to the Mondoshoans as the guardians of the stones, and there is no real telling how long they've been doing so, which is quite fascinating to me. Like the Mangalores, their culture is hinted in a way that makes them not only a mystery, but there's so much room to imagine so much more. I'm just drooling for a series about these guys that I think would be really fun to watch. How did they come to be the protectors of the stones? Did they create life on Earth? And how does Lilo factor in it? Did they engineer Lilu, or is she from another planet? Are humans the result of their tampering? Why is Earth in the center of the battle between good and evil? What do they look like underneath their bulky armor? And why can't they create something more efficient to move around in? There are so many questions, and yet it doesn't take away from the film for me because they did what they needed to do to serve in this story. More information can be useful at another time, but at this time we got what we needed. And I do believe that the Mondoshoans delivers one of the most powerful messages in the film when they say, time not important, only life important. Boom! We've got our thesis for the movie. The Mondoshoans are smart, so they basically sacrificed 3 of their own as well as the fifth element on their trip, knowing that they would be attacked, and gave the stones to the diva, who stored them in her stomach. Okay, yeah. That's weird. I don't know what to say about it, but it's one of the most shocking parts of the movie. As a diversion, she has a chest that appears to be where the stones are hidden. It's a quite brilliant moment to realize that the stones aren't in that chest, but they are inside of her body. The diva herself is an interesting character, physically towering over everyone, but also has a mysterious presence in the film as to how she's aware of the cause. She too has some psychic abilities, and it looks like she can actually speak to people telepathically. It's totally possible that Lilu and the diva could have entire conversations in silence if they ever actually met. The diva's performance is a very iconic moment in the film that impacted viewers. A few things are happening in that scene. The first half of the performance stops all of the exciting adventure to take in the beauty of the art of her voice and singing and music. Corbin witnesses the performance in awe, showing us that he's feeling something and allowing it to happen, and also bonding with the diva because he feels as if she's singing directly to him, which she is. From a storytelling point of view, he can't just be an ordinary audience member because of what he has to do in the story. It's a detail that can be often overlooked because it's followed by lighthearted music during an action scene. This is one of my favorite moments in the film because we can finally get to see Lilu show off some of her superior fighting skills as the protector of the universe, and I loved it. The diva in this story also supplies a great deal of advice to Corbin, telling him that Lilu needs his help and his love. Remember, love is a very important thing, because if not, she will die, foreshadowing the ending. I've already gone through so many characters, but the last character that I'm going to discuss is Ruby Rhod. He is a character that either you love or you dislike because of his outrageous behavior. He's incredibly modern, to be honest, and he would fit in among today's celebrities. Originally, his physical appearance and promiscuity was modeled after Prince, but louder and strikingly obnoxious. Even his name is a sexual reference. His motivation is providing an exciting show for his audience from 5 to 7 p.m. And it's really interesting because it's all business. He's the complete opposite to Corbin Dallas, and it's so much fun to see him on screen as they play off of each other. And he's trying to always keep his content hot, hot, hot! Oh, he's great. Now, the technical aspects. It was one of the most expensive movies ever produced outside of Hollywood for its time at $80 million. One of the most striking things about the film is how bright and colorful it was. This was something that Luc Besson demanded for the production, going against the trope of dark and dimly lit spaceships and planets. The rendition of New York City that appears in the story is a breathtaking positive look at the future. All of the buildings were fabulous little miniatures up to 20 feet tall and 80 feet long, taking 9 months to build at 1/24th scale. Another lovely feature in the film were the flying cars done by the visual effects team at Digital Domain, which included personal references to the members. Many of the employees can also be seen in the background in a lot of these scenes to fill out the world. I love that, and it made me want to live in this version of the future. It looks like such a fun place. And although the look of New York City appears to be unique, it also looks familiar too, and that's because you can see the similarities between it and movies' depictions of New York City or a city environment in Metropolis, that was in 1929, Heavy Metal in 1981, and Blade Runner in 1982. As I said before, Jean-Claude Mézières, along with Mobius, began collaborating for this movie in the early 1990s and are responsible for the majority of the creative style of the designs of the world and characters. Mobius had a big part to play in this. As I mentioned before, a lot of his prior works had some similarities. It caused a bit of drama after the movie was released because Alejandro Jodorowsky and Mobius both sued Luc Besson, claiming that he had plagiarized their collaborative comic, The Inco. There are a lot of similarities, like a falling character into a maze of flying cars, and a female character that is a super being. The case was dismissed in 2004, citing that tiny fragments of the comics were used, and Moebius may have unintentionally plagiarized his own work. Other impressive factors in the film are the tech pieces for this world. They all had a very practical feel to it rather than a miraculous fantasy tool. There is something about portraying tech this way that felt so believable, and I loved it. Zorg's office had a few of them, including some old school buttons and switches to control his robots. I also love that the sick monster kept a little pet in his desk. Later in the film, he's even seen petting the creature, and it's designs like this that really kept the film light and fun. The creature designs were also very menacing as well, with the warriors using mostly practical prosthetics and bodysuits to do the job. Many of the masks had such unique designs that the actors and stunt people had to be quite tall and have sloping foreheads to fit the suits. At some point, to save money on contact lenses and time putting on the makeup, the actors used combat goggles to hide unfinished makeup work. The rumor has it that the masks for these characters were recycled in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace in 1999. That's rumor, though. It might not be true. The Mondoshawan's creature design is so perplexing and indeed unique, as they look like mechanical upright turtles. And it's a wild design that makes no sense at all, and it makes me smile. How can a human being be inside those things? Where is the place for the actors to even see? Well, the designers thought of that by putting mini television monitors for the actors to see out of the little faces. It was such a complicated suit that it took 3 people about 20 minutes to dress one of the Mondoshaans. The wild, imaginative costumes was a big part of the reasons why I love this movie in particular, because at the time I was a fashion design student. Jean-Paul Gaultier designed the costumes with inspiration through Moebius's designs to accompany the themes and the color palette. A good example of this was Lilu's thermal bandage outfit. Now, according to the actress who plays Lilu, Mila Jovovich, while sitting down with Luc Besson and Jean-Paul Gaultier discussing her outfits, she came up with the idea to use thermal bandages to cover up the quote-unquote bits and pieces, or to cover up the naughty bits. But also the movie Heavy Metal. To Arnor's sequence was a heavy influence where the female protagonist wears a sexy, revealing costume where the neck is covered with a stripe of fabric down the center of the chest. And I love seeing these details like this. It is a beautiful design, and I love catching these kind of like similarities and details. Fhloston Paradise Cruise was such a cool idea that perhaps one day humans could have an off-world luxury experience like this, and it's precisely why I said that I would not mind living in this future. The spaceship, which looks like a souped-up cruise ship, was an incredibly detailed model that weighed over 500 pounds. One lo-fi hack was the background in space. The stars were created by poking holes in a sheet of black fabric. It's an old trick that works rather nicely. Another memorable feature of the film were the many explosions. I'm a big fan of good explosions in an action feature film, and this movie delivered one of the biggest indoor explosions ever filmed in the Fhloston main hall, taking 25 minutes to actually put it out. I also really marvel at the editing style for this film. It is phenomenal to think of all of the working parts that are going on at the same time. There are many scenes that were occurring at the same time that mirrored each other or completed. It started off with one scene and ends with the other scene, completing maybe a sentence or a thought or a message. And I thought that was brilliant, as well as very interesting. It's an interesting way to go about doing it, and it really kept your interest going without stopping the story to tell a whole bunch of exposition. Even though there is a lot of exposition in the film, it doesn't bog it down by keeping you visually stimulated in a way. So I loved that. It's a special movie in that regard. There are other movies that do that, but in particular, this movie really has it mastered. Now, the score by Eric Serra was unique, featuring a beautiful orchestral theme of mystery and twinkling melodies, giving us a feeling of something celestial or even supernatural. It's beautiful in a very soft, understated way. It never blares, but sometimes it's just hanging in the back, in the peripheral. And I thought it was a beautiful touch to the story. It didn't overpower it, didn't overpower your emotions one way or the other, but I felt like it was used to kind of assist in the storytelling in a very subtle way. I almost don't even recognize that it's happening, but it is there. The other music that was featured in the film used a lot of sounds that were a mix of the familiar and a twist of things like opera and dance, a lot of Middle Eastern influences and trip-hop, ambient music. These are all music styles that I absolutely love, and it was so well used together in this movie. One standout to me was the song that the diva Pava Laguna sings, which is from a real operatic aria. Now, I'm probably going to butcher this, but I'll try. Aldoso Sona, and it's basically translated as the Mad Song from the opera Lucia de Lammermoor. It's sung by the titular character, Lucia, just after she murders a man that she was forced to marry on their wedding day, and she's fantasizing that she has married the man that she really loves. It has been notoriously noted that this is one of the most difficult arias to sing. Inva Mula sung the song, but when she first saw the music sheet, she thought that it wasn't humanly possible to sing it because of the fast shift in notes, from going to extremely high to extremely low. And she had to sing the song in segments, and then they were stitched together as one composition. When the film came out, it astounded audiences worldwide. Singers struggled to cover the song, however, the code was cracked, and lots of singers can do it now. I will be remiss for not mentioning all of the ways you can find that song being sung by many singers on YouTube today. The other cool thing about the song is how it goes from being an aria to a dance song, making the scene iconic. Now, the performances. The film is very male-oriented, but it was visually pleasing and sexy to both male and female. Part of the reason for that was the cast. The film has an interesting cast of both well-known actors, beautiful elite models straight off the runways, and people with unique physical features. Jean Reno and Mel Gibson were considered for the role of Corbin Dallas. Luke eventually wanted Bruce Willis, but it didn't look like he was going to take the role because he was worried about taking big risks after starring in films that had been poorly received. After reading the script, he agreed to do it. Bruce typically plays a type of character on screen. It's not always him playing himself, but it's close. He gives all of his performance a naturalistic approach, and Luc Besson played into this well to get a fantastic performance. The scene where Corbin first encounters Lilu in his cab was improvised, with Bruce not knowing the divine language that she is speaking. So those moments of him looking at her with a very, very perplexed look on his face were real. Bruce had no idea what she was saying. And as well, when the diva sings, the entire audience had not seen her before or heard the song. So Bruce's reaction to everything that was going on was of real wonder and surprise. So all of that was from a very realistic point of view. There's something special about knowing that his performance came from an authentic place. I think he's excellent in this, giving us a protagonist that is inspired by love. You can see how much he's smiling, which is something that a lot of Bruce's characters don't typically do. This movie has been dubbed as Die Hard in Space, and I certainly think that it does remind me of that when we get to the second half of the film where there's more action and Bruce performs as a classic action hero. One thing I enjoy about Bruce's performance is that although there's a lot of funny characters around him, he's basically playing a serious opposition for the comedy to work. But he kind of does this thing where he inserts a little subtle funny moments on his own, and I think it's well placed, and his performance just really puts a very big smile on my face. He has quite a few punchy moments where he delivers some lines that are very, very funny. Elizabeth Berkley and Julia Roberts were strongly considered for the role of Lilu. Ultimately, Ukrainian model and actress Mila Jovovich beat out over 3,000 women. Prior to that, she appeared in Dazed and Confused in 1993 and had a bright career as a fashion model since she was 12 and eventually became a supermodel by the time she appeared in this movie. Luke hired her because she had physically fascinating and transformative abilities. Nothing was more transformative than when she had to have her brown hair dyed bright orange red, which horribly damaged it. By the end of the film, she wore a wig, which worked okay. There was something about her dedication to the project that really came through in every scene that she's in. For the role, she had intense training in martial arts, ballet, and as well you can visibly see all of the cuts and bruises she sustained on the shoot. Those were all real. Mila, who was fluent in 4 languages, added another to her list by learning and contributing to the development of the divine language of only 400 words, along with Luc Besson. The two had conversations and wrote letters to each other in the language. She was incredibly dedicated, not at all ever trying to maintain any kind of vanity. She surrendered to the part with raw honesty, and as the film keeps saying, she was perfect for the role. She was iconic. Now, it's so shocking to see Oscar winner Gary Oldman in a science fiction comedy like this. And it was indeed the highlight of the film. He doesn't like this genre of film, but he did it as a favor to his friend Luc Besson, who helped him finance his passion project, Nil by Mouth, in 1997, which was Gary's debut as a writer and director. Footage of the actor behind the scenes feature him having a lot of fun laughing and enjoying himself, and it can be seen on screen. He's serious, stern, emphatic, and a complete maniac, but he does it with style and grace and panache. Part of the impact of his performance was that he had a very thick American Southern accent. He said that he drew inspiration from former president candidate Ross Perot and Bugs Bunny. What an interesting pair. We've all seen him go over the top in many movies, but never hammy and fun. So this was a real treat to see. American comedian and actor Chris Tucker plays Ruby Rhod, previously most known for starring in Friday, released in 1995, along with Tom Lister Jr., who plays President Lindbergh in this film. Originally, Prince was who Luke wanted for the part. However, he declined, and I could see why. At this point in Prince's career, he was going in a different direction. But he was definitely a performer, but not a big, bold character like Ruby Rhod. Chris Tucker, however, did use Prince and Michael Jackson as inspiration. Sir Ian Holm played Victor Cornelius in this, and I feel like he was so comedic, which is excellently placed when needed. I was actually so charmed by the comedic work he did alongside Chris Tucker and balancing out the scenes perfectly. Now, my enjoyment. The film opened at the 1997 Cannes Film Festival. Luc Besson expressed interest in making a sequel. In an original draft of the script, Zorg survived the destruction of the hotel with a personal shield built into the ZF-1. However, even after the success of the film, Besson decided to go against it due to other interests. And I would love to see something like The Fifth Element, adventures where Lilu and Corbin have to save people all over the galaxy. There are so many parts of this universe that would be very fascinating to explore. At the end of the film, the orb stops and becomes the Earth's second moon, or the second satellite, and this indicates to me that the moon that we're typically used to seeing in the sky may have been previously an evil orb that was stopped by the five elements 5,000 years before, or even sometime earlier. Now, I've always thought it would be an amazing opportunity to tell another story of the fifth element as well, where there's an option of going even further into the future to tell a story with new characters and new challenges. But the fact that the film is a standalone film that tells such a good story, that is perfectly fine as well too. I actually like that it hasn't been tarnished by sequels, expanded things, because sometimes in the wrong hands it could go terribly wrong, and sometimes it can also feel like a money grab. A good comic book series could be a thing though. I mean, that's a pretty harmless way to do it. Now, this movie is a grand epic with shadows of the 1980s, but it also feels timeless as well. If you ask most people, including the filmmaker, the movie is about love being the fifth element, and I even mentioned that earlier. It's a widely accepted theory, but accidentally it could be interpreted to have two more poignant meanings. Being positioned at the center point doesn't activate the divine light. When Corbin admits his love, Lilu is then motivated to allow the light to flow through her. So I gathered that it's not the human body being present, but the spirit that is the fifth element. It's the soul, the will, the human emotion that releases the divine life. Love just so happens to be the emotion that Lilu feels at the moment. If it was just love, then that would mean that every single time this challenge came up, that the fifth element would have to be in love. And there's a very slim chance that that would happen every single time. And the other incidental message in this movie is the best message in my opinion. Life is important. Life is the fifth element, not just human life, but life in general, and that's why the Mondoshoans are involved. Life is important. It's a simple statement that is so very much overlooked in the film. In opposition, the loss of life is something that is so trivialized during war, and the film lightly discusses that in the conversation between Lilu and Corbin. Lilu asks why she should save humanity when they have no respect for life, as she sees the very many violent wars that have happened on Earth. Life is important, so we need to preserve life by any means we can. I love that message. It's a wonderful message. Yes, life is important. My rating is a 9.0. Well, that sums up my review. I hope you liked it, and if you did, I have over 100 of these videos, so go on and browse the channel and see more reviews from me just like this. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the bell icon to be the very first to see my next video. I want to take this moment to recognize my amazing, wonderful, incredibly awesome Patreon supporters who are responsible for helping me to produce this video. You know, without those guys, we would not have these reviews. So many thanks to these incredible movie lovers for their wonderful support. You too can be on this list by heading over to Patreon and get a little bit behind the scenes stuff from me that you don't get on YouTube. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.